Welcome, this is Jim, host of the Faith Influencer podcast, where we're going to dive into discussions on faith's role in everyday life, from navigating blended families to overcoming challenges. I'm a husband, a father, a Bible teacher, an advocate for applying faith to everyday life. So tune in as I share personal stories, valuable insights, and practical wisdom. Oh boy. We're going to cross the line today. Welcome to Faith Influencer. This is Jim Cunningham. We're going to talk about some stuff today, but I want to set this up. Here is a little discussion. Tell me what you think about it. Unexpectedly, I was reading this the other day. Unexpectedly, someone came between us in our marriage. It was a source of great frustration and became a source of lots of arguments. Who came between us in our marriage? It wasn't an affair. It wasn't an emotional connection with someone else. Who came between us? It was your mother-in-law, right? It was your father-in-law. It was daddy's girl. It was mama's boy. Are you following me? How many times have you had discussions in your family because of your in-laws? We're going to talk about that today. So I got to tell you, this is sort of a sticky subject for me because I think in my mind it's so ridiculous how to the extent that some people go allowing their parents into their marriage that it boggles my mind. So I'm going to try to be kind about it today as we walk through this subject. Now, I want to ask you this. Some of you who are listening, I want you to raise your hand in the comments. You raise your hand by typing it in the comments. Raise your hand and say, I have such a struggle with my mother-in-law because her nose is so big she can't keep it out of my marriage. How many of you want to raise your hand and say, yeah, that's me? How many of you guys want to raise your hand and say, my father-in-law still thinks that this is his little girl, so he's always butting in, or she's always bringing him into our marriage? How many of you guys want to raise your hand and say, that's our marriage? Exactly. How many of you ladies want to say to your mother-in-law, do you know what you're causing in our... How many of you guys want to say to the father-in-law that, do you know you're still trying to usurp my role? What's your comment to that? How many of you are living that right now? So let's talk about that and dive into it. Now, I'm going to say on one hand, there's a little bit of understanding that I have because I have two grown daughters, okay? And I was never one of these dads who was good with the empty nest. Some people say, I can't wait till my kids get older and get out of the house and I am set free. I don't have to support them anymore. We're going to go do everything somewhere like that, okay? Whatever. I wasn't that guy. I was never great with the empty nest. The thought that my daughters were going to be grown and leave the house was dreadful to me. It's natural, but it was still dreadful. Okay, I'm going to admit something. I'm almost trying to keep from laughing because this is true. Okay, when my first daughter, my oldest daughter, and she won't listen to this because she doesn't listen to my podcast because she thinks they're weird hearing her dad talk about this stuff, but whatever. So when my first daughter got married, it was a great day. I was so happy for her. Her wedding was amazing. The father-daughter dance, I could not hardly get through the tears of the father-daughter dance. Okay. All of this emotional stuff. But now I'm going to admit something. Don't judge me. After she got married and changed her last name, I did not change her last name in my phone for months. I kept the names you grew up with. That's true. I'm just being honest. I did. There was one little thing I was hanging on to because she was my little girl. She was my firstborn. But to be honest, I did that with my second daughter too. So whatever. So I say all that to say I know that it's difficult. Now, what I'm going to say to you, I want to say has a biblical foundation for it, because when God created the family in Genesis, he very clearly states this is how it's to go. When a man and woman get married, they're to leave their mother and their father, and they're to cleave to one another. Now, that's God's prescription for how the home should go. But what happens when you get married, but you don't cleave to each other? Your little husband and wife still has a mom and dad involved in your relation. What happens when that's the case? Some of you are bending over, listening closer because you said, yeah, I want to know what you do about that because that's what I've got. So we're going to walk through that. I'm going to try to be kind about it, even though in a little way I understand that it is difficult to let go. So I heard someone ask doing interview with a bunch of guys, and this is what they ask. Who is expendable of these three? Now, I think this is hilarious, honestly, but who is expendable of these three? Who comes first? Is it your wife comes first? I'm talking to the guys. Or does your mother come first? Or your daughter come first? Some of these guys said, mom comes first because my wife is expendable. I can get rid of the wife, can't get rid of mom. Which, by the way, is a terrible answer, but that's how some of you live. That's how some of you act, that your wife is, she can go. But mom is mom. So I heard that interview and I thought, listen, this is Faith Influencer. We have a faith-based answer in what we do. When you leave mother and father and cleave unto your spouse, tell me how you somehow turn that around and say, I'm going to cleave unto my spouse and my dad. I'm going to cleave to my spouse, but I'm still going to hang on to my mama. Where does that fit in God's prescription? It doesn't fit. As a matter of fact, if you want to disrupt a home, then let mom or dad be too involved in their son and daughter's new marriage. There's hardly anything that's going to disrupt a home more than that. I'm going to give you some more examples. So, a man shall leave his mother and father and marry his wife and cleave unto his wife. And it didn't say, and hang on to mama. It didn't say, and first I want to talk to the daughters, really, and then I'm going to talk to the men. It didn't say to the daughter, yeah, but still lean on daddy. Now, there was a while for a few times when my oldest daughter got married that when a question came up, she'd call me first. If she had a question about her car, she'd call me first. She had a question about her insurance, she'd call me first. She did that at first for a few times. And, she's calling. I was okay with that. But then I got to thinking, you know what? I don't even know if she's talking to her husband about this stuff. And I said to her, and I called her name, and I said, talk to your husband. You live with him now. I have turned you over to him. So it goes both ways. Sometimes the newly married daughter still tries to hang on. Sometimes the parent still tries to hang on. It can go either direction, but either way it goes, it's wrong. It doesn't work. So here is a guy, and he says, I'm so happy that I'm married, but my mom always did my laundry. And she could wash my clothes like no. Or here's a guy who says, you know what? My mother makes this rice dish. It is so good. And he calls mama up and says, will you make me this rice dish? And then he gets it. She's happy to do it. And he brings it home and sits it on the counter. And his wife is like, what is that? Oh, this is mama's specialty. You should taste it. You're going to love this. And he is clueless. He has no idea why his wife's heart just sinks when he does that. I'll give you an example of my own marriage. This happened one time, and it was innocent, but there was something that needed to be fixed in our house. And my wife called her dad, and he lives a mile away. And here he comes with his toolbox and comes right into our house. He's unaware. My wife's not thinking anything about it. And I'm not even aware that it needed to be fixed. And he comes in with his toolbox and starts working on this. And what do you think I thought? Do you think I thought, oh, cool, my father in law's over here working on this, I don't have to mess with it? No. I thought there was an invasion into my house. I'm the man of this house. That's what I thought. I, I don't know if you think that's right or wrong, but my wife should have said something to me about it. So we had the discussion, and that didn't happen again. She understood what I felt like. So you've got a boy who's a mama's boy, and I'm going to say to you, mama's boy, that you don't realize what you're causing in your marriage because you're still a mama's boy. By the way, do you know how weak that is? So those of you guys who are listening to me and you're mama's boy, do you know how that sounds, that you still call on mama to do something? Uh, Leave your mother and father and cleave unto your wife. And so we oftentimes hurt our spouse, but let me say the other way around. Here's a mama, and oh, she loves her baby boy. And can I tell you how many times this has happened? Can I tell you sometimes in counseling when the wife who's never said this to her husband says it in counseling because she feels like it's a safe space? Do you know how many times that she has said that my mother in law causes so much trouble in our family that I'm not even sure we're going to stay married? And her husband looks at her and says, "What are you talking about?" Only to discover that there are times, listen to this, this really happens. Does this happen in your marriage? That the mother in law would say to the son, this has happened over and over, that the mother in law would say to her baby boy, "Your wife ought to be doing this for you. Your wife's not treating you correctly. Your wife should cook you this. Your wife should do that. Hey, mother in law, you are no longer in a role to have any say so or opinion about that." But worse than that, what do you do if you're a newly married husband and you love your mama, and you can still love your mama, but you love your mama and your mama wants to give you an opinion about something your wife is doing wrong? Now listen to me. Your mother wants to say something to you that your wife is doing wrong. Well, if you're this weakling little guy that your wife probably shouldn't have married because you're so weak, this is what you're going to do. You're going to listen to her, and then in your heart, you're going to be saying, "Yeah, she ought to be doing that for me." And then you might even say something to your wife. "You know what? Why don't you do this?" And your wife's thinking, "Where did that come from?" Let me be real honest. This is how you answer. Your mama comes to you and she says to you, "You know, your wife really ought to be doing this for you." Let me tell you how I really think you should answer that. You're going to think it's too offensive because you're mama's boy, but let me tell you how you should answer that. I really think you should simply say, "Mama, mind your own business." Right? Stay out of it. Mind your own business. If you have a mother who wants to butt into your marriage, you have to stop it. And guess who's responsible for stopping it? You are. You, the son, you're responsible for stopping your mother from butting in to your family. She has no say so. She has no right. And it's only going to disrupt your marriage, and it's only going to cause problems. But it's not your wife's job to address it. If you leave it up to your wife to have to call her mother in law and address this, then you're weaker than what we thought. It's your job to stand up to your mom. Can you do it? Can you do it? Can you stand up to your mom, or is your mom more important to you than your wife? That's really what it comes down to. And I'll tell you that that's how your wife sees it too. Your wife thinks that she is number two in your life, and the number one woman in your life is your mama. That's not a biblical marriage at all. But you know what? It doesn't just go that way, it goes the other way too. On the other side of it, you have a daughter who is a daddy's girl, and she always calls daddy first. And you ask her why. We're sitting in an office and we're going through a counseling session, and you ask her why, and this is the kind of stuff that she says. she says, well, I had the greatest daddy in the world. And she always calls him daddy. Like when she was a little girl, she calls him daddy. I had the greatest daddy in the world. I was his little girl. And he did everything for me. He could fix anything. I never had to carry anything. Anything that was heavy, my daddy would carry it. I didn't have to work. He paid for everything. He paid for my insurance when I first left the house. He did everything to me. My daddy's always been there. Do you know how many times that a daughter has said that in counseling about her dad? And her husband is sitting there listening to this, thinking, how could I ever live up to that? How could I ever live up to how she sees her dad? Now, listen, it's okay to revere your dad. I hope you had a dad that was an amazing father, a loving father. I hope that was your dad. But you've left that household now. You don't live in that household now. You have a new relationship. You have a husband now. Cleave unto your husband, not your husband and your dad. Cling to your husband. So, what do you think happens when your husband drives in and he sees your dad's vehicle in the driveway? Similar to my story I shared earlier. What do you think happens when she calls and daddy comes running? What do you think happens when she still leans on her dad more than she does her husband? I can tell you what happens. It emasculates your husband. Do you know what I mean by that? It's like taking his man parts and cutting them off. That's emasculating. That's what you're doing to your husband when you are basically saying, my dad knows so much more than you do, I'm going to call him. My dad can do so much more than you can, I'm going to call him. My dad can fix, my dad treats me better than you, so I'm going to call him. That's what you're doing. You're emasculating your husband. And when you emasculate your husband, that's going to ruin your marriage of any intimacy. Now, let's take it the other side. Dad, you love your little girl and you jumped her whole life because she was your little girl. I might say, though this isn't the subject today, I might say that was probably inappropriate too when she was a little girl, that you jumped every time she wanted you to do something, but that's a whole different thing. So, you coming over to your daughter's house when she's married to fix everything, and just because you've always jumped when she called, do you realize what you're doing to your daughter's marriage? You want the best for your daughter and for her marriage, then stay out. Now that may hurt you because you're still trying to hang on to her. You're starting to hang on to your little girl. So if she needs something, you want to be there. No, you need to not be there. When your girl needs something, you need to say, honey, ask your husband. Whatever his name is, call it out. Honey, ask Charles. Charles will do it. But Daddy, no, I can't do that anymore. You're married. Dad, stand up and tell your daughter she's married now. You're not going to do it. Now, that's the way it's supposed to be. You say, oh, it's going to hurt feelings, whatever. It might for a minute. But this is the actual design of God, that she cleaved to her husband. She can't continue to cling to her dad. Now, let's take it a little further, because this is something that happens all the time. What do you do when you have holidays? And growing up, this was my family. Growing up, the holiday was the biggest time. It was the family time. We bring everybody brings food. We have the greatest time. And at the same time, now you're married and he has a family too. And your spouse doesn't want to go through the first day, the second day, and third day of how some do with their holidays and stay all together. She doesn't want to do all of that stuff that you used to do. What do? You can't mold your spouse into the way your family did it when you were growing up. You can't expect her to mold into that. This is what you do. Create your own. Create your own family traditions and holidays. You still spend time with her parents and his parents as you can, but none of that takes the place of your family. So even in the holidays, you have to sometimes put your foot down and say, you know what? Mom wants us to do this, but we just can't do it. Mom wants us to do that. We can't. Dad's asking for this, but we just can't do it this time. We can't do it. Sometimes you have to do that. Um, in-laws cause so much trouble in families because they butt in that it's ridiculous. Now, I'm going to say what's the most ridiculous thing about all of that to me is if there's a husband who can't get in charge of this. That's probably the most ridiculous thing of all. Is a husband who allows his parents now to butt in. I mean, that's such a weakness to me that it's hard for me to even talk about it. So, what do you do, wife, if you have a husband who's a mama's boy? What do you do? Well, you like everything, you communicate with him. You don't do it in a confrontational way. You talk to him and say, "Listen, why I want to tell you how I feel," and you do it lovingly because you love your husband, and maybe he's not even aware of it. And you have this conversation with him, and you say, "Listen, can I tell you how I really feel?" I mean, it's sometime you're going to have this conversation. You say, "Can I tell you how I really feel? I really feel that if we were to put in order the women who are most important in your life, that your mother would always come first." I mean, you may have to have that discussion. Your mother would always come first. I would come second. Maybe you just need to be real honest and say, there in no way do I feel that I am first in your life. I feel like your mom is. I feel like that if your mom wanted something over what I wanted, you would go with your mom. Have that discussion always. If you need to go to counseling and work through this, go to counseling. Other way around, you've husband, you've walked on eggshells because your father-in-law butts in, because your daughter still relies on her father-in-law. That happens so often. What do? You have the same conversation. You tell her he is no longer the most important man in your life. Now, do you ever go to your father-in-law and have this discussion? Well, it would go over like a pregnant pole vaulter, but you probably ought to have that discussion sometime with your father-in-law if your daughter doesn't do it. You may have to say, if his daughter doesn't do it, you may have to say to your wife, you may have to say, honey, if you don't talk to your dad, I want to talk to him. Now, it's really the person whose parent it is, it's really your job to have that discussion with your parents to stay out of it. Or it's your job to break the tie with your parent. I mean, daughter, you may have to go to your dad and say, "Dad, listen, I'm putting you in a bad place here because I'm leaning on you more than I am my husband. I just can't do that anymore." You may have to have that conversation. Parents, parents, let go of your children. Let go of your children. So I did. I came to that place where I changed my daughter's last name to her married name in my phone. I've now done it with both of them. And I say that kind of laughing because it is true, but I never butted into their marriage. And I'm very thankful that I got to grow up in a situation where no in-laws on either side ever butted in. I'm sure not everything worked out how they wanted, but they just kept it to themselves. And that's what we're asking you to do. Just keep it to yourselves. Stay out of everybody's business. And especially you men, sir, husband, you step up and lead in all of this. So I'm really looking forward to your comments in this. How many of you have a mother-in-law who butts into everything? How many of you have a father-in-law who still thinks that he's the only one who can help his little girl? How many of you are in those kind of situations? Tell me about it. Tell me what you're doing in those scenarios. Thank you for joining us for Faith Influencer. This is Jim Cunningham, and we'll see you next time.